Good morning and half a day, ladies and gentlemen. This budget hearing will now reconvene with the Department of Agriculture. On behalf of Speaker Benjamin B.J.F. Cruz, I want to thank everyone for your presence here today. As we continue the budget process for fiscal year 2019, we face overwhelming challenges due to the impacts of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, and will continue to have on the government of Guam's revenue stream. Given such austere times, Speaker found it prudent that the Committee on Appropriations have a different tone and approach to the budget hearings. The continued implication that past patterns of appropriation levels will no longer be taken as a given. Prior to this hearing, the Speaker sent a letter to each agency present today asking that you provide testimony answering specific questions relative to your agency's missions, how you measure the achievement of your missions, and other relevant matters. In prior fiscal years, the committee had taken an incremental budget approach and had requested your agency to justify any additional funding above your existing funding level. For this fiscal year, the Speaker and the Committee on Appropriations is engaging in a zero-based budgeting ZBB approach, which does not start with the prior fiscal year's funding level to justify next fiscal year's funding level. Rather, we take a deeper look into each agency's budgets from the ground up. Given the likelihood of decreased revenues from which to fund government services for our people, we must take a closer look at each and every agency of this government and not be bound to what we have always provided in the past. Some may have Googled zero-based budgeting and found that there is no true consensus in which ZBB is operationalized. I'll reiterate for the Speaker, as he wanted to clarify to everyone, that the ZBB zero-based budgeting approach the committee intends on taking is more of a shift in mindset, and as we continue this budget process, the public should be aware that what was provided for in the past is not what the committee will be solely basing decisions on for the future. The committee is doing everything it can to show the people of Guam that we are committing to a ground-up approach because the current fiscal environment calls for it. With that said, I invite the Department of Agriculture to take a seat, and we will initiate the presentation on your budget. Just for the information of the public, the Sergeant-at-Arms has already sworn the individuals who will be providing testimony this morning on behalf of the Department of Agriculture. I also, before we proceed with the testimony, would like to recognize the presence of the following senators: Senator Tom Atta, I believe he's the chair of the Department of Agriculture, and Senator Mary Torres. Thank you very much, senators, for joining us this morning for this budget hearing. Mr. Sablan?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Senator Ogden, Senator Atta, Oversight Chair, Senator Torres. We are aware of the realization of the current government budget crisis, and we're doing our part for the cost-saving measures. But that will be discussed during the hearing. Just for the record, I'm going to read this out in formality to addressing it to the Speaker. So, Buenas and Afide, Speaker Cruz and members of the Committee on Appropriation and Adjudication. I am Matthew Longuero Sablan, the Director of the Department of Agriculture. And joining me this morning is Ms. Antonia Santos, the Department Administrative Service Officer. Also in the audience, I got my staff, division chief. So at any given time, any technical questions that might be required regarding their respective division, if by request I can call them up, Senator, thank you. And again, thank you for the opportunity to present the Department of Agriculture's fiscal year 2019 budget request. The department is requesting fiscal year 2019 appropriation total of $4,106,346 for its operation, $3,141,923 from the general fund, and $9,064,423 from the special fund. Approximately $3,506,580 5 is for personnel, and 599,760 is for the operational costs and utilities. Now, I'm going to go into the core missions of the department. And the core missions of the department is to protect and promote the agricultural resources and economy of the territory of Guam by research, quarantine, control, conservation, and extension work as authorized in its divisions and its other laws. The following are the department's accomplishments in its mission. Number 1, increasing the level of service performed to farmers and customers by providing and establishing a cohesive implementation of programs. 2, coordinating a more efficient communication of network to market the existence of such services being provided by the government. 3, organizing and direct the activities to customers with respect to available funds initiated by the department. 4, encouraging more involvement in farming activities island-wide. 5, encouraging the public to protect, nurture, and conserve our natural resources, restoring and maintaining balance to our ecosystem. 6, working closely with local and federal stakeholders on natural resources, stewardship, and agricultural developments. 7, providing a high level of service to the public in support of our programs. And lastly, 8, educating the public in the prevention of invasive species into our island. Overall, it's all about protecting and preserving our natural resources, both, and environment, both land and water. I know we've given you, shown on the handouts that we give you, on the written testimony, the department and division's responsibilities and objectives, but I know it's going to be lengthy, but what do you call it? The shown on that are the department's division and section's responsibilities and major objectives. And that would include, illustrated to include the number of full-time employees and breakdown of budget requests per division. This is all general fund. The department's decrease in its operation service, that's where the decrease is. It is imperative that the department maintains the manpower level requested of 62 full-time employees due to the increase of workload demands and mandated programs on current staff caused by the loss of employees due to attrition during the current and past fiscal years. The department is working with personnel who are currently on military leave without pay status for the entirety of the upcoming fiscal year, and more importantly, the department anticipates at least 7 employees who will be eligible to retire by the end of this fiscal year and the next. So, you know, we're here this morning, and it's not a wish request or a want request. We're here on a need request to manage, you know, based on the government's current budget situation. So we will survive with what we are requesting. In closing, I just want to add on also that there are federal funds that actually are attributed to the department, but that's aside. But it's a significant amount. The department also oversees and administers several federal programs in the divisions of forestry and soil resources, agriculture development services, aquatic and wildlife resources, and biosecurity divisions with approximately $7 million. In closing, I thank you for the opportunity, and we are open and subject to answer your questions regarding the Department of Agriculture's FY 2019 budget request as presented. Thank you, Mrs. Masi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sablan. And also for the record, for those of our community who are watching this, Mr. Sablan has submitted approximately 8 pages in testimony which highlights the individualized sections and divisions within the Department of Agriculture with additional justification for the costs. So if anyone in the community who is watching this public hearing would like copies of it, and then please direct your request to the Speaker's office. Thank you very much, Mr. Sablan. I do have a few questions that have been prepared by the Chairman of Appropriations. And just taking a look, you're very familiar with the two budgetary requests for fiscal year 19. One was option 1, subject to increased revenues, and the other one was option 2, if in fact the government did not have the adjustment in revenues. Okay?
I do.
You're very familiar with that. So, okay, from that perspective, some of the questions that have been prepared by the committee and the chairperson of the Committee on Appropriations. First question is, can the Department of Agriculture operate at its current level under its option 2 budget request?
I believe there's going to be a great significant of decrease as per how we projected with using option 1. And I know Ms. Santos here has the figures. And again, we'll survive with if option 1. That's the need request that we're here this morning. It's going to be a lot tougher going the direction of option 2, but maybe Ms. Santos can elaborate more.
Good morning, Senator. Well, on the option 2, we selected the option 1 because the department can continue on with the mandates and services that we need to offer. On the option 2, when we did that, we had to eliminate 13 employees, and that's only on salaries, no operational, on the general fund.
So based on the budget that was submitted, reflecting on option 2, 13 employees would have been released.
Yes, Senator.
Now, of those 13 positions, are they all classified?
I'm sorry?
Are they all classified?
Yes.
So based on the response from Mr. Sablan, can you clarify the response to the question? Can the Department of Agriculture operate at its current level under option 2?
Can we operate on option 2? Can we deal with option 2? No.
Okay. Now, how many individuals do you anticipate retiring from the department before the end of the fiscal year?
We have, as of currently, I believe we'll be eligible about 7 individuals.
No, but how many do you anticipate will retire? Not eligible, but...
For this year, I believe maybe 5.
Okay. Moving further with the speaker's questions. Under option 2, the Forestry and Soil Resources Division includes 8 names listed in the staffing pattern of Forestry Aid 1 positions. That does not include amounts funded for these positions. Is it the intent of the Department of Agriculture to not fund these warm bodies?
Excuse me, 8 full-time employees? They are full-time employees.
I understand.
Yeah.
The question is, under option 2, the Forestry and Soil Resources Division includes 8 names listed in the staffing pattern of Forestry Aid 1 positions. That does not include amounts funded for these positions. Is it the intent of the Department of Agriculture to not fund these warm bodies?
Well, yes, that's in the Forestry Division that we deleted. And simply the reason why we did that is because Forestry also can work with the federal grantors to see if they can work with the federal grantors to get them more funding, because they're supposed to be, well, not really matching, because they're right now, well, their salaries are 100% locally funded general fund, but their operation is 100% federal funds. So we figured that we can work with the federal to see if they can assist or get additional funding for them so they can match with the 13 employees that are deleted. Where the other divisions are all 100% general fund. And this is the reason why we route it in that manner.
Okay, so Ms. Santos is saying that you could work with the federal granting agency to see if we can increase the federal funds. Has there been any effort to move in that direction?
Well, there hasn't been any discussion whether we can work with the federal, but we will need to work with the division chiefs in that manner.
Okay. Moving on with the questions. Under both options 1 and 2, the department requests for $8,000 for overtime for its conservation officers. Do you believe this amount requested will be adequate to sustain your current operations going into fiscal year 2019.
That is correct.
Under option 1, you have a request for $60,000 for computers, enforcement gear, printers, radios, etc. for the conservation officers. But under option 2, there is no request for such equipment. Let me ask the first question under that scenario. Can you elaborate on the number of computers, printers, and radios needed and type of enforcement gear requested?
I'm sorry, Senator?
On the computers.
Under that scenario, under option 1, you requested $60,000 for computers, enforcement gear, printers, radios for the conservation officers. But under option 2, there is no request for such equipment. Can you elaborate on the number of computers, printers, and radios needed and type of enforcement gear requested?
Well, simply because the option 2 only covers general fund for personnel. There was no operation in option 2. In option 1, we do have operational funds for them.
But the question was, can you elaborate on the number of computers, printers, and radios needed and type of enforcement gear requested?
Well, Senator, at the moment, they don't have enough computers, and this is even up to now, they're requesting for it. But we'll need to find out.
We'll find out and get back to you and give you the information.
Can you please get back to the Speaker, to the Chair of Appropriations, because it's a specific question. If in one of your budget options, option 1, you put in $60,000 specifically for all those equipment, computers as well as gear, you should have an inkling or an idea of exactly what that requirement would be and how those funds are going to be expended. Okay, the second follow-on question on that, with regards to that, is, does the department currently have this equipment? Does the department currently have this equipment? And it's a follow-on question because you're asking for $60,000 in one scenario.
Right.
You're going to purchase computer gear and printers and other enforcement gear.
Okay.
So the follow-on question under that scenario is, does the department currently have this equipment?
No, we don't.
Okay. Another follow-on question is, can it forego the purchase of these items next fiscal year?
Yes, we will.
Okay, another question is, under option 1, and these are all questions from the Chair of the Committee on Appropriations. Under option 1, you have a request for $50,408 for fuel, office supplies, janitorial supplies, and safety gear for the conservation officers. But under option 2, there is no request for such supplies. Can you elaborate on how much of this lump sum amount of $50,408 is for fuel?
No, because in option 2, we don't have operation.
Okay. Again, Senator, on option 2, we don't have operation money. Yeah.
But it says under option 1, you're requesting that amount for those items: fuel, office supplies, janitorial supplies, and safety gear for the conservation officers. So the first question under that scenario is, can you elaborate on how much of this amount is for fuel?
For fuel, that would we anticipate fuel about $10,000.
Okay. Under that same scenario, again, this is from the chairman, I noticed that janitorial and office supplies are also requested for other divisions with the department, totaling approximately $30,000 under option 1 and $10,000 under option 2. Do you think the department can share its office and janitorial supplies to achieve savings?
You're referring to the $20,000 in director's office?
We're back to the scenario. The scenario is under option 1, there's a $50,408 allocation for fuel, office supplies, janitorial supplies, and safety gear for conservation officers. The question is, I noticed that janitorial and office supplies are also requested for other divisions, with the department totaling approximately $30,000 under option 1 and $10,000 under option 2. Do you think the department can share its office and janitorial supplies to achieve savings?
Yes, we could.
Can I also, this is not from the chairman, I'm going to follow on just a couple of questions with regards to the department. Since October 1st, has there been any personnel that have retired from the department?
Retired as of October 1st?
As of
No.
October 1st? No.
No.
And right now, based on your understanding that there could be up to 5 individuals that may retire by the close of this fiscal year?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll yield to the Chair of Agriculture, Senator Ada.
Thank you very much, and good morning. First of all, just listening to the first set of questions that the chair was asking, is it accurate to say that the difference between option 1 and option 2 is that in option 2, we've basically funded just for the personnel? But if you're a conservation officer that has to go out to the field, you will probably have to buy your own fuel, repair the official vehicle that you have to use. And pretty much, if you want to justify your existence at the department, you have to buy your own tools and supplies. Is that correct?
That is correct. Currently, we're managing, and again, realization of the government budget situation. That is correct. It's going to hamper. We will be actually spending money out of our pockets.
Yeah. And how effective do you think the department would be under the conditions of option 2?
We'll manage. Maybe not as effective as if we were to go with option 1,
How
but we'll
long
manage.
do you think the conservation officers can last going out to the field to do their work, having to buy their own gas, and having to make repairs to their own vehicles? How long do you think they could hold up to that?
No, not long.
Not long, right?
Right.
So they'll probably have to
Yeah.
shut down.
Right.
soon.
Again,
So in
Senator,
essence, option 2 really makes for a very ineffective organization. And it's like that because we're going to save all positions at the cost of the tools, providing the tools that the employees will need.
yeah. You're right, Senator. Option 2 actually compromises the mission, the mandate. As it is, we're surviving. But to put more injury to the wound, option 2 that would be a big challenge. Yeah.
So under option 2, Department of Agriculture will probably only be able to do a flag raising ceremony in the mornings and probably nothing much more after that. Right?
More or less. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
That's
Pretty
it.
much. Yeah.
I have some questions. One is, the agency receives about $4.4 million in federal grants. And this is 100% federal grants. Now, of course, there was something in the news recently about a lot of that money still being unspent. So can you elaborate a little bit about this 4.4 million? Is it a 50-50 for personnel and 100% for operations? How does that mix work? And why hasn't a large bulk of this funds been spent? Is it because we can't get requisitions through? We can't hire personnel? What? So can somebody elaborate on this federal grants, please?
Yeah, and I do know about the article that was put out by the Office of Inspector General, and the reality here is, actually, if they had interviewed me, I would have given them the facts. But the reality here is, it's not money lost; it's money that actually is ongoing, carried over, and.
I'm sorry, Mr. Director, if I can just intervene. If there's anyone else in your department that would be providing testimony,
right.
I would need to have you direct them to the Sergeant at Arms so that he can swear them in before they join us.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you, Mr. Director. Senator Ada, you still have to.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, I was going to request if I can bring up Chief Tino Ogden, but that was be the segue. But he can actually give you more explanation that. But again, on as far as monies being not spent or lost, that's not true. I mean, there's reason, and he will explain.
I know that the federal funds are good up to about 2020, but let's just kind of clear the air now then, so maybe if you can clarify that.
Yeah, most of these are in a five-year term, so it carries over. And again, Tino will.
Good morning, Senators. My name is, again, Tino Ogden. There, thank you. I am the Division Chief of Aquatic and Wildlife Resources. Just to elaborate, I think this meeting is kind of apropos. We actually had our federal funders just last week. Spent the whole week going through our grants and looking at various things, et cetera, et cetera. With much of our, just to give you a history, we actually have close to, in the past, last year, I believe close to 60 grants, different projects. What they've done is to literally make sure that all the grants are funded and labeled through what they call an FBMS number. It's a Federal Bureau of Management System, numbering system, so that we know what the grants are and easily can call those things in. What is apropos as far as last week's meeting is that there was we went through all the grants, just about 40 of those for the current year, and went through what is really crucial in all this is knowing what is going to be reverted, and that term is used, reversions. Those are funds that are sitting that, unless they are spent by the end of the fiscal year, go back to basically the pot, so we kind of lose that money. What we also look at are monies that we currently have obligated, and those need to be spent or actually have time to spend. So much of what we were looking at were just funds that we needed to, what's the word, show some activity, I think is what our funder was telling us to do. So we went through that whole, all the list of funds that we are looking at. And so we are looking at much of that to be acted on, so to speak, currently. One thing to be very clear as far as what was published is that there's a certain amount of funding. You know, what was actually in the article, what was reported really was just lumping everything. We're going to lose it. That was one thing to be very clear, that there's a distinction between what will be reverted and what needs to be spent fairly soon as far as the funds are concerned. And I think with the previous meeting, or with the meeting with our federal funder, those was fairly made clear as what we needed to do.
So maybe before we get too far into the weeds, if I may ask, I noticed in the, there's the one attachment, DAWR organizational chart. There was a number of vacant positions in there. Mm-hmm. Are those vacant positions 100% federally funded?
Yes.
And so what would be the reason why a position that is 100% federally funded be vacant?
Just to go back a little, I believe there are certain positions that are maybe partially 50% federal and 50% local. As far as why some of these positions haven't been filled, one of the major problems we have on the professional level, we don't have applicants. We follow DOA's rules as far as announcing positions, going through that, and so constantly what we're facing on our end is people turning in an application. And I believe the message we had with our federal funders, we need to be a little more proactive and go out there and seek positions, seek applicants, so to speak.
Most of those, like you mentioned, technical positions, like specialized positions, we can consider it hard to fill positions. We announce through every avenue, through even website. We even go as far as outsource, off-island. We do, and so it's basically, that was the challenge.
So let me ask this then. If you find it difficult to hire a biologist one, have you stopped to take a look if we are trying to hire a rocket scientist when really all we need is a auto mechanic?
For a biologist one, I don't think that would be much of a challenge compared to the higher positions by echelon.
I didn't see any biologist threes that were vacant. I think they were mostly
ones.
Mostly ones.
Okay. You know, one of the things that we realize with our position, our salaries, they are not competitive on the world scale, and so that's one of the other reasons why we find it difficult to get applications. You know, the University of Guam Marine Lab, those guys are out there. That's one of the sources that we seek. We have the University of Guam's botany department, you know, all the College of Arts and Life Sciences, lots of places to get potential applicants. We're just not competitive. Actually, at one point, we got a position, we got an applicant, we were identified, he was identified, etc. Almost ready to hire. Guess what? Got a job somewhere else. So we lost him out. So we're back to the seeking again for applicants as well as that goes.
Okay. With these vacant positions, how far has your recruitment effort gone? Is it to the point where you have initiated the paperwork, sent it out of the department, down to Department of Agriculture, and Department of Administration, and then Department of Administration, or is it still sitting on somebody's desk at the Department of Agriculture?
Well, most of the GG1s are down at DOA. It's just that there's not too many of them that are, applicants that are qualified. So, but some of them
So back to my question, Mr. Santos. You say most of the GG1s. My question was, are all the GG1s been initiated and sent down to DOA? It's in their court now, or do you still have quite a bit sitting on the director's desk or whatever?
They're all down at DOA. So they've all been processed, and some of them are on continuous announcement. And some they had to return to the department, like we were just recently talking about it, because we have to redo the GG1 because when they announced it, nobody applies for it. So the GG1s are like expired accounts.
To answer that, we did process GG1s.
But there are some down at DOA that's still pending for applicants.
Yeah. But I guess you won't have too many applicants wanting to come work for Department of Agriculture if they have to buy their own work tools, have to buy their own gasoline, repair their own official vehicles, would they? Doesn't make for a good working environment, does it?
That's true.
Okay. I'll yield for now, Mr. Chairman, and just give an opportunity for...
Thank you. I want to follow up on a couple of the questions that were posed with regards to the federal funds program, because I know you mentioned, Ms. Santos, that some GG1s were returned. Now, you're very familiar with the recruitment process in the government of Guam. And one of the aspects of the recruitment process is a continuous list being established. So you put in a recruitment GG1, you maintain a continuous list that would be valid for about a year or even beyond that time frame. So rather than saying, okay, this is a GG1, we need this considered, we need this approved, and then after 90 days is returned because, by the way, time has already elapsed. So my question with regards to your statement about the GG1s being returned, Why is that process not being utilized?
Well, they're being returned simply because the accounts, I mean, the G ones are old already. And they want us to verify that the account is still good, the position is still good. So we just, recently I've been discussing with Jay Gutierrez, because Jay's overlooking that now. So we're looking at the actual positions and account numbers as well as positions to fill. So that's what we are currently working, and those positions are like Bio 1, 2, and 3. There's still there's a continuous announcement for Bio 3, a Bio 4, but there's no applicants. So we're working on the program coordinators as well, and Bio 1's doing Bios 1 and 2.
Okay, let's move back to the other subject with regards to federal funds. And we understand the process about funds being reversed back to the grantor so that in fact they can throw it back into the major pool or pot and redisperse it to other jurisdictions. Now, if you know that we're coming close to the end of the fiscal year, because it's mission related, it's either you're allocating it towards the recruitment of personnel, or you're utilizing it specifically for that particular division. Now, if you set aside arbitrarily $35,000 for recruitment of a biologist 1, you're coming up 5 months out from the end of the fiscal year. Right now, that recruitment is not successful. Is there a process in place where you can raise a red flag and say, Mr. Director, we need to reallocate these funds. We need to go back to the granting agency, see if we can reallocate it so that it's used specifically for the mission of the agency. And the reason this question is being posed is because if we are being given federal funds and at the end of the fiscal year it has to revert back to the granting agency, granted next year we may be able to get the same amount of money, but we're not spending the money this fiscal year. So in this case, it all comes down to, is there a process where, in fact, you can redirect some of these resources so that it is mission, it supports the mission of the respective divisions within agriculture?
Yes, and like Tino mentioned, they had a meeting with their federal funders, and they met with DOA. There is the term called corrective action plan. So upon meeting with the funders, we tell them about the impact, the challenges. So with that plan itself, the cap, I guess discussion with Tino and the funders were, maybe you can go ahead and elaborate. Yeah.
Senator, when we look at federally funded activities or the funds themselves, there is all this, what we always got to keep in mind is whether the money is old money or new money. New funding, new money is usually, you just got appropriated by Congress and it's available to the state. Old money, for the most part, has to be spent within a couple of years. So we've got our timeline in which Congress says, well, if you don't use it, we take it. And then I believe voting access has a 5-year limit, grace period, in which you got to spend that by that period. What our federal funders does is they do the spending game as far as old money, they watch it, and so as we spend the funds, so to speak, all the old funds that are going to expire, those get obligated as quickly as we could. So there's quite a bit of managing on that part as far as the funds go, so that we don't lose out. And they actually do a fairly good job as far as getting us to appropriate or get us to obligate as the funds become available and before it gets expired.
Yeah. Tino, I think we all understand that it's just this idea that a report comes out, and whether it's $1 million or whether it's $4 million is reverted back to the granting agency, subject to reverting back to the state in terms of Guam being able to continue to utilize that. So in this case, it's maximizing every single dollar that we receive through federal funds so that it can enhance your mission and your ability to be able to carry out your responsibility. That's all. From this perspective, we have federal money, let's spend it. spend it. Find a way to fix this process, this mechanism, regardless as to whether it's for personnel and then reallocating it, whether you want to call it corrective action towards the end of the fiscal year and reallocating that so that in fact it's used for by Guam, Department of Agriculture, and that's really what I'm concerned about, and a number of the senators are concerned about, is utilizing whatever resources we can, especially in these austere times. So I'll just leave it at that. Let me just hear from the conservation officers, because you've always had challenges in the past. So
thank you,
please
Mr.
identify
Chair.
yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and senators, for giving us this opportunity to express our needs. As far as this subject is going, I just want to make it very clear to everyone that the law enforcement section is not privy to any of those funds. Under sports fish restoration, those funds come from the fishermen and hunters, but they're very specific that that money needs to be spent on restoration and preservation and conservation of the areas that they hunt and fish. Okay, so we have no access to that. There are some aspects where where DAR, our chief, can assist us in one way or another, but it's very, very, very minimal. Currently, we share what is called the conservation fund, but there's little, at times, no money inside that fund. Currently, we're pulling from that to operate on some of our missions, the larger missions, most especially with fuel. That's what we just saved that little pocket just for fuel to operate, other than what we already do ourselves, by ourselves. Just give you an example, the police week is coming up in a few days. I had one of my officers go spend his own money. He volunteered it to buy a uniform to go over there. We do get a $350 once a year stipend, but everybody here knows we have to buy what we need for the field, not dress. So he volunteered. I gave him one of my old pants that can no longer fit. We're tailoring that with our own money. He's getting an old shirt repaired to make his own shirt for this ceremony. So it's been like this for way too long. We cannot operate this way. We do need to get Class A uniforms in case somebody passes away or for formal occasions. We're asking for that. We cannot get it with option 2 or option B. We need operational funds. The last time we got a locally funded fleet of vehicles was back in, almost 12, 14 years ago? It's too long, too much. We're using our own monies to keep our vehicles afloat. One complaint already from our officer to JFT that the vehicle is inoperable. And we only have 2 for patrol right now. We need the support. It's time that the government steps up and gives us what we need to operate. The people are demanding that. We have no phone service. We have no computers. I got a copier, a small little copier donated by one of my friends for us to use because we don't have one. I just purchased ink from my own pocket. Why am I doing this? Why are my guys doing this? We have computers that are 10, 20 years old. We're still getting hand-me-downs here and there. That's unacceptable for a government to make an enforcement operation last. And if you recall, most recently, we covered down for the Guam Police Department. If we are so dedicated, trained, and able to protect this community in the place of the Guam Police Department, why are we not given the proper care like every other agency? Is it because we're small? That's not acceptable. In the next 3 years, the 3 senior guys, to include myself, will be gone. We are having rookies that are 7 years or less take over our department under this office. They need seasoning. It's not done yet. And we need replacements so we can train them before we leave. We need more support, Senator. We need it now before I leave. I've been saying this for many hearings, and it's come. The time has come. So
Thank you.
I'm imploring you. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. Madam Vice Speaker, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director, and all of you for your testimony. I just wanted to find out, who is the BBMR counterpart for the Department of Agriculture?
The analyst for BBMR?
Yes.
Ray Rieta.
Okay, Ray. And is anyone assisting the Department of Agriculture in prioritizing the federal funds, like you're working with DOA, I'm assuming, to prioritize those positions that are federally funded and process those as quick as possible? Does BBMR help you in that regard also?
Well, we just go to human resource and deal with either Mike Schnipp or the staff under him. And that's the only area that we discuss with. And then, of course, recently the director and the federal grantor, as well as Tino Agan, has visited the DOA to discuss about the recruitment situation. Right. So they're working with us in that manner.
Okay. I also wanted to find out, okay, so you mentioned that the Department of Agriculture employees, conservation officers in particular, were used to cover for Guam Police Department. Were you placed at Department of Corrections or what?
No, ma'am. We augmented the Hagatnya precinct the whole time. The police officers were tasked to assist DOC. All my officers covered down.
All 8 of them?
Yes. Well, the ones that were on the island, because I was off island at the time.
Okay. That's my other question for you, Mr. Agan, is so the staffing pattern shows for conservation officers 8, but potentially 15 positions exist, but so 7 of those are not funded. That's what it says. Yes, all right, but you had requested, and I didn't notice this myself, but in the earlier questions, they pointed out that $50,000 was requested by the Conservation Division for fuel, supplies, and other things. So do you think this is, I mean, it's only enough for maybe one, not even one position, maybe one very low-level position, but do you think that's a priority, that you need these supplies more than you need one more officer?
It goes hand in hand, ma'am. Let me explain. The radio system that we're operating now is already 6 years obsolete. We're just fortunate enough to have a little bit of the supplies to keep our radio system operational for now, but that's going out already. Motorola will not service it anymore. They have already upgraded their system and services, so we're at the tail end of this product. But as far as personnel, meaning that life before property, we do not have enough officers to sustain a good safety environment with the numbers we have. We do need to replace them as well as the equipment. It's almost equally important for both to happen at the same time. For example, for many years we've been asking for a budget, operational budget to cover body armor. To date, we have not received that money. We are going out there chasing poachers down without body armor. The body armor that I was initially given is called as second chance body armor. It's already 27 years old today, and that's way beyond its life expectancy. So those are the kind of things we have to weigh. If you're not going to give me the body armor, then give me the guys that can handle a situation together. And that's a very, very sad situation. You know, I'm dreading the day, knock on wood, that should anything happen because of our lack of providing this equipment to these guys that are going to be doing this job when I retire. I don't want to know about that. So, all right. Well, splitting hairs here.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I understand that. Yeah. But then, can you talk to me in general, Mr. Director, about the divisions? So the conservation division looks like
section, ma'am. We're just a section.
Sorry.
Yes.
According to its staffing pattern, it's short of employees, but forestry looks like it's full. Is that correct? Right. But aquatic and wildlife is also short, but those are federally funded positions. Are there any other general funded positions that you're not filling, aside from conservation officers? And some admin. I've seen some admin that are also not filled.
Right. As far as the director's office, we only have 3 full-time employees. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, so the only section that's not fully staffed is the conservation and the aquatic and wildlife federally funded positions. Is that correct?
Senator, you're referring to the conservation officers with an admin staff?
No, I'm asking,
Never mind.
I see that there are at least 7 positions in the conservation section that are not funded, it says.
Yes.
And I'm asking, are there any other sections that have positions that are not funded that are mission essential?
Well, we have also agricultural development that right now, currently, they have 4 staff agriculture management specialist positions, and those are the staff also that anytime now they can retire. So they also have a lot of vacancies that are unfunded.
Okay.
Yes, Senator, to answer your question, basically all of the divisions or
Yeah.
sections, there's vacancies that we can possibly fund, but not all of them are fully staffed.
Forestry looks fully staffed, is that correct?
Yes, 20.
Oh,
Well, under
Okay.
option 1, it looks like there's a decrease in the personnel expense under forestry
Okay, correction of
and
that.
conservation. And I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you to explain that. Yeah, so that's where you took the savings when the BBMR required that you do some cost savings. Did you save money by reducing personnel in forestry and conservation?
That's true. And on my correction, yes, forestry is staffed.
Okay. All right. Is there, I don't know as much about Department of Ag as you do, so do you believe that's the best arrangement then? That if we have to maintain this funding level, that these are the sections that should be full versus not full? I guess we're all concerned about the very low number of conservation officers. We've had several hearings for different topics, and this comes up on almost every one of them, about how the 8 have to cover the entire island, and it seems to me almost impossible. And so we're tasking them with even more things to cover, and they are in charge. There's an article talking about endangered species, catching poachers, responding to forestry fires, protecting marine preserves, things out 3 miles out into the sea. And then they talked about the vehicle challenges they're having, the jet ski challenges that they're having, and the military deployments could cause the number of officers to drop down to 3. Did that happen?
Currently, we have 1 officer on military deployment to Anderson Air Force Base who will be gone till the end of 2019 to deployment to, I believe, Afghanistan. And then we have 1 coming back next week that just left to Korea. So we do have 3 officers that are on military duty, but they're not all gone at one time right now. Yes.
So is that out of the 8, only 5 are active?
Yes, ma'am. We were asking also if the body could give us, we only need, and I've said this many times, $30,000 to cover our reserve program. That's 10 bodies. And those 10 bodies are vying for full-time positions here, but they will remain conservation officer reservists and cover down a lot of these hours. We've brought that forward many times. 30,000 is nothing for the government to look at. We need that desperately. We have their equipment, and we just don't have a vehicle to take them around. But we went out and got the equipment for them, the belts, the firearms. Everything's lined up already. And these are qualified, post-certified GCC graduates that we are waiting they're waiting for years already.
Mr. Director, did you want to say something?
Yes, I am aware of the challenges, and I am working on to mitigate that. Of course, obviously we're in the government-wide budget crisis, but my intent is to do corrective action to those shortcomings. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Madam Vice Speaker, but let me ask you one follow-on question then. Because for fiscal year 18, you were allocated $4.4 million just for this fiscal year. And you're asking for less in the next fiscal year. So what's preventing the Department of Agriculture and the administration from prioritizing some of these requirements for the conservation officers as well as the other divisions? because you just responded to the Vice Speaker
Right.
that we're working on it and we're going to try to address it. But then this fiscal year's budget that was given to you is more than what you're requesting next fiscal year.
So we yes, with that budget, we'll try to augment, our shortcoming, but that is the intent. Yeah.
But that doesn't answer the question. What is preventing the department from addressing some of these critical needs with a higher budget for fiscal year 18 versus what you're requesting in fiscal year 19? We're discussing fiscal year 19 budget,
Right.
of which you're requesting less. And right now, the department is faced with some challenges in terms of getting some critical supplies and armor, updated armor for conservation officers and perhaps some of the other divisions. So what's preventing the administration from addressing those concerns this fiscal year?
There's no challenge on that, Senator. Like I mentioned again, I will find the avenues to remedy that. As far as prevention of filling the positions, that is going to be my course of action, is filling it. But I know what you're asking.
Okay, Madam Vice Speaker, you still have the floor.
Just have two more questions. So, Tino, if you don't mind, what's the effect of not filling those federally funded positions right now? What are we lacking? What service are we not
What are
getting?
the impacts to something like that? Basically, we continue on this unfortunate trend of reversion. Because what it is...
Of what? I'm sorry.
Reversion.
Reversion.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I mean, what service to the public
I see.
is not being provided without filling those positions?
And, one of the positions that remains unfilled, we actually had an applicant, administrative assistant and administrative officer. These are our money accounts people within our division. If that remains unfilled, we get, we continue this road of barely or monitoring, the expenditures and all that, et cetera. And so that becomes a challenge. And so you don't want to operate a division without those folks, because those guys are the financial people that keep us all on track as far as where things are, what monies are being spent, and what monies need to be acted on fairly quickly. So as far as the unfilled positions, that is one fairly visible impact that will happen as far as that goes. And then the other, like what we mentioned earlier, the other positions are professional positions that need to be. And those guys are positions, the Bio 1s, the Bio 2s, the Bio 3s. Those guys are the folks we need to do the actual projects that we've put online.
Yeah, what type of projects? What are we not getting while we don't fill those positions?
Gosh. We have 40-some different projects.
Oh, okay.
MPAs related.
MPAs? Marine preserves?
Marine preserve, marine
Yes,
protected
okay.
areas. We have different projects related to that. Creel surveys. We do a lot of cooperative partnerships projects with the Marine Lab, different
Okay.
things and all that.
All right.
Et cetera, et cetera. Invasive
All right.
species, different
Oh.
things going on.
What about the invasive species? Because I was just going to ask about the plant inspection, and it looks like
Yeah.
FY29 request is less than the FY2018 authorization, just like the overall budget, and is that going to be effective?
I believe maybe Dr. Campbell will be in a better position to answer those questions probably.
Option 1 goes from 581,000 to 288,000 in the biosecurity division.
Please identify yourself for the
Yes,
record.
thank you,
Dr.
Vice
Campbell.
Speaker. And Senators, thank you. I believe the question was, are we going to be affected?
I'm sorry,
by...
Doc, just identify yourself for the record.
Yes, my name is Russell Campbell. I'm the entomologist and the chief of the Biosecurity Division. I believe you had a question about
the decrease in budget, particularly for the Biosecurity Division, not so much for the invasive species, or section rather, I don't know if these are divisions or sections, but yes, why such a large decrease, and are we going to be effective? It looks like it's, a lot of it's in personnel. Well, I don't know. What do you think,
Yes,
Dr.
Vice
Campbell?
Speaker. The Biosecurity Division has two sections. It has the plant inspection section and the invasive species section. You can see the functions of those sections here listed in the document. But as far as the decrease that you're talking about, that is primarily due to the ceiling which was given to us from BBMR. So I know last year, if you look at the appropriated budget, there was $650,000 approximately appropriated to the Biosecurity Division from the Guam Invasive Species Inspection Fee Fund. And the ceiling that we were given for this proposed budget this year was only $304,000 from that fee fund. So that's what we're following.
All right, were you able to use the money as planned in FY18?
We're still working to hire additional staff. As you may know, the Biosecurity Division is relatively new. It was authorized in Public Law 31-43, and we have been working to build the division up to be able to deal with its mandates. We have just currently finished creating the invasive species coordinator position, and I believe within a few days we will be able to do the GG1 on that, since the hiring freeze is now over with apparently. And also the time period that was required to advertise the creation of that position. There are certain time periods that we had to follow because that was a new position in the classified service that had to be created, which took a considerable amount of time. But now we're ready to recruit that position. So we will be attempting to, yes, continue to increase the personnel in the division. We have some other staff also to hire, clerk and administrative personnel and commodity inspectors.
All right, well, that's good to hear. We're counting on all of you, right? And just one final question, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Tino, what is the status of that east side boat ramp? We talked about this at the beginning. I know it's federally funded, or we have federal funds that you were talking about using before.
I think, unfortunately, Jay, where's Jay? We'll get back to it. You know what, Senator? Probably, rather than give misinformation, I probably should get back to you on that. We'll send you an email or something.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
No problem.
That way you can, yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. Senator Torres?
I just had a follow-up question with regard to law enforcement. What is the relationship currently with customs and quarantine and opportunities to, when we think of customs and quarantine, a lot of the mission of Department of Agriculture to enforce local and federal statutes, rules, and regulations, a lot of it has similarities with regard to border protection also, the introduction of harmful and illegal material into Guam. But what is your current relationship with customs and quarantine and the spillover nature of funds into your, what I see as a collective or collaborative effort?
Currently, ma'am, we have a partnership with the Maritime Interdiction Task Force section of the Guam Custom and Quarantine. It's manned by, I believe, maybe 6 officers up there. We do not share funding at all, but we do share some responsibilities as far as the protection of sea mammals, turtles, endangered species, things like that. The protection of, for example, like the dolphins and other animals related to the oceanographic side of the house. As far as the other aspects in regards to Customs and the Department of Agriculture, biosecurity has a relationship with their folks too in relation to shipping and handling of products going in and out of Guam. That's the other side. Again, whether they have a funding source, we have no, I do not have that information for you. But as far as the law enforcement section, if there is, for example, a violation identified through United States Wildlife Service, Inspector Art Tamming will notify us, and we build a case by case, but there's no funding there. We do share the responsibility of enforcing that, to include but not limited to, let's say, persons trying to reach U.S. soil, immigration violations and enforcement. We do that as well, but we do not, that's not our priority, and we have no funding there as well.
Yeah, I brought that up because there seems to be a cooperative effort. I mean, in terms of law enforcement, you know, although you have your niche and what you're specifically entailed, there is a reciprocal effect to your surveillance and your enforcement. And so I wonder though, Tino, maybe at some point that issue can be brought up, because if you're looking in terms of border protection in a very finite area like Guam, because it's isolated by ocean, right? There are no land borders with other jurisdictions. Ocean is our border. The case can be made that perhaps a stronger border protection can be reinforced by Department of Agriculture, and perhaps a case can be made for additional federal funding to augment some of what you're doing. Because I feel for you, and I know that we all want, you know, more effectiveness and more resources.
Currently, ma'am, we understand between Guam and Hawaii, our closest asset for response to any type of emergency, i.e. terrorism or natural disaster, whatever comes to us. We have what we call a 72-hour window, and that's to include the military presence as well. We understand and know that this is the window we have to play with to survive before any kind of assistance comes from anywhere else. We have the groundwork. The network is in place already. The problem that we have that we're sharing right now with you is we are unprepared, both personnel and equipment-wise, to do our part in that web. We need to be we need to be solid in that aspect. And just as a footnote, we cover a lot of area that no other agency on Guam covers in regards to crime against the people of Guam. Just last year, we were a major part of the Alcohol Suppression Task Force. We understand and know larger agencies would not give up anybody to help out. I didn't know alcohol-related crimes were just for for agriculture to worry about, or to the police. It was us and the police and a couple of other small agencies that participated in this to protect everybody. So we're only asking to give us the bare minimum of what we need. We need personnel and equipment, and it's been way too long. It's been way, way too long. Thank you very much.
Senator, just to add what Mark had mentioned, we actually as an agency are taking advantage of as much as we can. We are communicating with NOAA law enforcement, and so we you know, and you know, those guys deal with the marine environment, the ocean, and so all those activities related to NOAA, that where law enforcement, where they can help, you know, they do the same. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is another agency on the federal side where we interact with them quite often in providing us with whatever assistance they could. But as Mark said, you know, that can only go so far. And where the rubber meets the road is, you know, where the funding has got to be. And, you know, these guys, I feel for them. Their funding is direly needed, I think is the term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Torres. Senator Ada?
In reviewing the budget documents, I noticed that there was one attachment, the equipment listing. And when you go through that, there's a number of pieces of equipment, vehicles. Either they're not operable, needs repair. I'm surprised that it's not reflecting either surveyed, or if it in fact is not a candidate yet for being surveyed. Is the challenge to get these equipment repaired or replaced because you don't have the money, or because we are having challenges with procurement?
Pretty much funding.
Funding.
Yeah.
Now, there may be some that probably you have the funds for. So let me ask, have all your people who engage in the procurement functions, have they gone through the procurement training that's required by law?
That's correct, yes.
Can you send that down? Because last year my office sent out an inquiry to the agencies under the oversight of the committee, asking who the employees are in the department that have undergone the procurement training. So I'm going to ask that you provide to the chairperson, well, I'm the chairperson also with oversight, the speaker, but for the listing of the names of the Department of Agricultural personnel who have completed the procurement training, and to what level. I think there's like four modules. And also, to finish out the issue about personnel, can you also provide information? I don't necessarily care to see the GG ones, but I would like to see a listing of the GG ones that have been initiated and are down at DOA awaiting their action, and GG ones that are still in the department waiting for whatever action to eventually get it out to DOA, okay? And somehow that should match up to the vacant personnel in your budget document. I guess the other question that I have is, I noticed, like, for example, there's this one under the conservation officer equipment listing. There was listed 150 chemical protective suits, and in the comment section it says one is available. So that kind of begs the question, where are the other 149? I would have expected maybe to see one is available, 149 surveyed, or whatever. The same as, I guess, the expectation for the 2002 vehicle that's inoperative. Are you planning on surveying those things, or what?
Yes, we are. Yeah.
If I was to go back and take a look at the 2018 budget document, will I find the same vehicles listed as being inoperative?
Yes, you would.
I will. Yeah. So then over the past 12 months, there has been no effort made to survey them. I don't know. I guess you've got to... I just don't understand why we continue to carry it on the books if it's just a piece of junk.
Okay. Got it.
So are you saying you're going to initiate some effort
yes, we will. We will survey. Like what I mentioned, we will survey.
Under the conservation officer information that was provided, there was listed, there was like about 146 confiscated weapons in the evidence storage locker. There was like about 3 bow and arrows and whatnot. I don't know how long they've been stored, but what is the status of that? When do you finally get rid of these things?
I can address that, sir.
Briefly.
Yes, sir. The weapons are kept in our armory at the department, and the only avenue of getting rid of them, for lack of a better term, is going through the Guam Police Department to make sure that they are they are destroyed. For the lack of the government to have an auction in place, we could actually do, that's another avenue, but we've never done it. But as far as my personal feeling is, we should just destroy the weapons that we have. Some of them are not releasable to any auction because of what conditions, but we do have them, and the only way we've ever done it before is to chop them up and put them in barrels, cement, and...
So here's my concern, Mr. Director. I don't know what kind of an armory you have and the security of these weapons, but it would be, I think it would be a tragedy that, you know, this year we report that there's 146 confiscated weapons, and next year we find out there's only 120. Because then, as long as you keep these things under your custody, that's going to be your responsibility, and if something drastic happens and it gets traced back that this came from Department of Agriculture, then I certainly, I've got this on my notes. I'm going to be following up on what you guys end up, or what your plans are for these confiscated weapons that you're holding in your evidence storage locker. There was a document there, it was the BBMR PYO-1. And it was a one-page document that showed $60,000 in payables outstanding as far back as 2005. Some of them were payables. It had individuals, I think it had Mr. Uggan's name on there for a detail that he was on, and it was over 10,000, I believe, and it hasn't been paid, and it goes back as far as 2005. I don't mean to turn this into an oversight hearing, but these was information that was provided in the budget document, and it just begs the question. So can somebody answer that, please? Believe me, I may be raising my voice, but I'm as cool as a cucumber.
You know, just on a philosophical point of view, I do things here because I love the job and I love Guam. And that's been my philosophy throughout. And so when we were detailed, when things were not being filled and we weren't getting the positions announced, et cetera, you know, most of us kind of like take the job and move it on because we value the resources and we want to make sure. And that's how we did it.
I understand that. I have no problems with, you know,
sure.
Working for the love of country and all that. But it's there, it's an official document that these are payables that are outstanding, and it goes ways back. So either we do something with it,
or take it out,
or, you know, just like the 2002 vehicle that's been sitting there inoperable since 2002.
We'll take action.
Okay, I got that on my notes too, right? Now, there was a document there in the decision package for the, I think, under animal health. There were some things there that major objectives: seek a major change in the rabies quarantine laws and regulations as it pertains to dogs and cats. Seek legislation to encourage the spaying of privately owned dogs. Establish a facility for the emergency medical care of indigent wild animals. But this idea of seeking legislation, is that a new idea that just surfaced this fiscal year, or is that something that the agency has been contemplating?
Senator, can I bring up Dr. Poole? He's in charge of that division to clarify more in response to your question. Dr. Poole.
Sure.
Okay.
Dr. Poole, we need you to be sworn in. Dr. Poole. And before you respond to the question, if you can just identify yourself for the record.
Yes, I'm Tom Poole. I'm the territorial veterinarian, have been for the last almost 13 years.
And so the question was, I guess in the goals and objectives of the decision package under animal health, there was 2 entries there about, I guess, seeking legislative action, intervention on regarding rabies and quarantine laws, and also legislation to encourage spaying of privately owned dogs. Can you maybe elaborate?
Yes,
on
sir,
that?
I can. We've been working for the last 2.5 years with the Stray Animal Roundup Committee that's chaired by Mayor Rudy Montanani of Jigo. And we have come up with legislation that we have submitted to Senator Rodriguez for consideration. And what that legislation proposes, the biggest thing is that we have, like most other jurisdictions, found ourselves incapable of controlling stray animals simply through rounding up, trapping, apprehending them, finding homes for those that we can, and euthanizing the rest. That allows us to capture perhaps 1,000 animals a year. We have shown through other studies repeatedly that a single female dog on Guam can produce in 18 months more than 120 new dogs. So we can't capture all of those dogs, and we can't control the stray animal problem. At one time we had 22 animal control officers when this mission was at Public Health. We now actually have 3 that are full-time animal control officers. So it's really impossible. Now we had 6, but we lost 3 to cancer in the last year. So anyway, we found that impossible. So what other jurisdictions have done, what we hope to do, is to have mandatory neutering of female dogs.
Okay, so to my question then, so we can move on. So that initiative has actually, Department of Agriculture has touched bases with the legislature, at least with one committee chair.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's ongoing. I found this other one here interesting. Establish a facility for the emergency medical care of indigent and wild animals in need of veterinary medical care.
Yes, sir. I can talk to you about that too. At present, there's really nothing. You know, GAIN stands for Guam Animals in Need, but GAIN doesn't have the ability or the funding to really provide very much medical care for animals that require it. And there is the point that we're having to euthanize healthy animals every day. And in some sense, it doesn't make sense to spend a lot of money, you know, GAIN's limited resources trying to medically care for animals. And so what we would hope to do is to have a facility that could use my expertise to provide care for animals. GAIN often has to euthanize injured animals that, you know, immediately.
Dr. Poole, I'm sorry. I'm going to interject and suspend discussion on that, because if it doesn't relate to the fiscal year 19 budget, it may be a proposal on the part of the department. But if it doesn't relate to the numbers, then obviously that would be for future discussion. So, Senator Ada, any follow-on questions?
Yeah, well, that was listed as a major objective, so I'm just wondering how realistic that objective is given the constrained funding that the department has. So
it has been an unfunded objective for a long time.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I have a question about, this was listed in the, this is with respect to special pay, night differential and hazard pay budgeted. It comes out to about $10,000 for forestry aid personnel. Can you please explain why that is being budgeted, night differential and hazard pay?
Senator, the forestry aid people, they also do fire work. from January through June, they do fire suppression. So therefore, they do get paid hazardous and night differential. Forestry 8.
And that amount that's being budgeted, is that based on historical data? Or is that just a wing it?
Just a wing it, yeah.
Okay. Contractual services in the biosecurity division. I believe in FY17 or 18, there was something as much as almost $450,000 that was budgeted for contractual services to get the air curtain burner. I noticed that this year, the contractual services that was being budgeted was down to like about $15,000. So I'm kind of curious. We're assessing this fee, the invasive species fund fee down at the port for every container that comes in, and which is projected to generate about $600,000. And if I recall, the law specifically says that those funds are for the Invasive Species Protection Fund. So I'm just wondering if we're only, what are we using the money for other than, unless it's just to hire people? Help me understand it.
Well, Senator, you mentioned about the air curtain burner. The Public Law 3143 there's a language there authorizing the Department of Division to for eradication disposal. So that was an initiative to utilize the air curtain burner, and it's not what was actually stated, the full amount. It was just one. You know, I believe it was like 50,000. Now what was stated was 300 some. But anyways, that was the. It was a trial initiative, utilizing equipment that we have on island to eradicate rhino beetle and the fire ants. And maybe Dr. Campbell can.
I guess my bottom line question is, we're assessing these fees to the shippers that are bringing things in, and I guess my expectation is to see that this money is being used to fund programs to address the issue of the fire ants, the rhinos. But I'm not convinced by looking at the budget document that, you know, other than that we've hired people. I don't know. Can you assure me that we're actually using these funding source to be taking a closer look at the invasive species?
Well, yes, Senator. I believe that all of the funds used from that fee are directly addressing invasive species issues.
By hiring people?
By hiring people for the division, to get people on the ground in the division. We've hired recently an Agriculturist 3, Dr. Dula, who has taken control of the invasive species section.
Okay.
And we've got become much more proactive in training the public and importers, and going out and doing educational efforts and so on.
Okay.
And so on. So yeah, the reason why I'm not too sure. You mentioned that there was a large number under contractual. Did you have a question about?
Well, it's just that when you compare what was spent by the division in the previous year, you know, it was a large amount, and it was basically for the air curtain services.
Well, it was under contractual, but it wasn't put in for air curtain services in the beginning. I think in the beginning it was put in because we were looking at the issue of paying rent on the facility over in Tejan.
Okay, all right. On to another question. What is the status of the telephone services to the department? Has it been restored?
Well, we're working into that, Senator.
You're looking into it.
Yeah,
so my question is, does the department have telephone services today?
Not at the moment.
So if I tried to call Department of Agriculture, I cannot contact you?
That's correct.
How long has that been?
Well, PDS. We're working with GSA because we just need for them, because every month we have to submit an adjustment of encumbrance. So once we submit that, then we can get with DOA to pay our monthly billing. But we're already working with PDS.
How long has this situation been going on?
March 15.
Since March 15.
Yeah.
So that means if I'm going to get a hold of somebody at the Division of Agriculture and Wildlife, if I don't know his personal cell number, I wouldn't be able to get a hold of them?
Well, Division of Wildlife they still have their phones.
Oh, because they're federally funded.
Well, no, because they're also, they work with GTA. They have GTA. So they work with GTA that, you know, if they can work with their purchase orders as well, not to disconnect their lines.
Okay. Finally, my final question is, when was the last time the department issued a citizen-centric report?
I believe it was 2 years ago. We realized we didn't submit last year, but we will catch up. We will submit.
How soon do you think you will?
We're looking about maybe within this month.
This month?
Right.
She looked at you like gave you a double take.
No, actually, Senator, when I found out about that, it was months ago that I said we got to work on this. Yeah.
Okay, I got that on my notes too.
Okay. And as far as the coverage, this will be for last year's 2017. Yeah. Of course, 18 will be for next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just one last thing about the telephone services. Again, is it a procurement issue or is it a funding issue?
No, well, it's more procurement.
Procurement. And when you say it's a procurement issue, what can you explain that more?
Well, GSA seem to have a lot of new employees, so they always have different requirement. And when we go back, they need another requirement. They go back, we need another. So it's just a number of things that we needed to work with GSA. You had the same problem. Yeah.
Very interesting experience. In fact, this morning I had a little temper issues on my end. Unfortunately, I believe the requirements seem to change with as much repetition as the changes happen as far as their staffing down at GSA. Believe it or not, we had air conditioning that hasn't been functioning since October of 2017. We have funding to spend money, and it's just, I believe, the problem with a 10-ton air conditioner, you don't buy it off the shelf. So that has to be ordered. So we had issues of establishing accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Those were finally done, and then finally we were able to get a vendor out or a company to go out there and look at our unit and say, it's broken, needs to be replaced. And so finally we got it. And so now we're gonna get some resolution to that. Unfortunately, it's a unit that has to be ordered, so we won't see it until June of this year.
It's one of those units that it's central. It's a central system, which in the first place should have been split system. One central system goes down, the whole building is.
So is the department completely dependent on GSA to initiate its procurement? Or do you have, or is the situation where the people who are responsible for procuring supplies and services for Department of Agriculture know their procurement procedures well enough to be able to formulate the paperwork and then just go take it down to GSA and have them sign off?
We're a line agency.
Yeah.
So we gotta go through GSA.
They are.
Okay. All right. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Ada. Incidentally, Mr. Director, you know, there was a statement that was mentioned a little earlier about your budget requests for this upcoming fiscal year is, what, $300,000-$400,000 less than what you're you received this fiscal year. So with all of these challenges that have been outlined, I certainly hope that you're able to address a good number of them before you transition into the next FY. This hearing is now recessed until tomorrow, May 11, 2018 at 2 p.m., when the committee will reconvene with the Guam Regional Transit Authority and the Guam Election Commission. Thank you very much, everyone.